Day by day, our society is shifting towards the dystopian. Corrupt politicians, endless warfare, and political dishonesty, all buried under the false promise of seemingly boundless technological advancement that's doing more to hurt us than actually help us. It's in times like these that we need art. But now, even the safety of our own creations can't be guaranteed. And it all ties back to that word, dystopian. Tyrannical governments, a crumbling society, and an overarching feeling of hopelessness in search for an answer. It doesn't sound real when I put it that way, right? Dystopian fiction has been a staple in modern society for generations. Ender's Game was released in 1985, but its attempt to dissect a totalitarian society was nothing new, considering Yevgeny Zamyatin's We introduced the idea all the way back in 1921. This means that these stories holding any kind of relevance today would be absurd. Surely we wouldn't make the same mistakes as fictional characters, right? The truth of dystopian fiction is that it's horrifying. And it's horrifying because it's possible. These stories have always had some kind of prophetic hold on society. Like it's never been a matter of if, only when. And that's exactly why I love it. Because it's more than plain nihilism. It's an examination, an analysis of the way we engage with the world around us, a call to question those above us, and a slap in the face to people who didn't think of it sooner. Judgment in its purest form. But how? How do these stories draw so many parallels with our reality, bridge the gap between fiction and the real world, and why do we feel judged by works of art from literal decades ago? How can dystopian fiction critique our future? What makes us human? Is it the organic matter we're composed of? The biological, chemical makeup of our flesh? Or is it our awareness, something that to this day science still can't explain, in spite of it being the very reason we can live as human beings? Blade Runner asks this question and then some, and over the course of its hour and 50-minute runtime, the conclusion it comes to is interesting, to say the least. Blade Runner dehumanizes humanity, and it does this through the perceived antagonists of its plot, the replicants. Dystopian fiction is no stranger to its humanoid robotic beings. iRobot, the Terminator, and Big Hero 6 all have stories that center around androids, and in particular, their relationships with humans. But where each of these narratives promote unity between the humans and their robotic counterparts, Blade Runner proposes a separation between the two that's near insurmountable. The battle between Deckard and the replicant stowaways on Earth isn't one of a human fighting inhuman beings, but a passionate struggle for life and death between a man who's barely living and beings who want nothing more than to feel truly alive. This can be seen as a reflection of real life. The inherent fear of our own creations becoming more human than us is the very reason why artificial intelligence has been such a heated topic of debate in recent years. Nobody wants to feel replaceable, like we're fighting to leave our mark on a planet that desperately wants to forget us. This lends to the tragedy of Roy Batty's character. His existence is fleeting, and he's destined to be forgotten in the grand scheme of things. But in spite of this, his battle to be remembered and his struggle to have an impact is a suspiciously human one, and ironically enough, it's because of this that Roy Batty wasn't forgotten. His memories, his beliefs live on through us, the audience. Of course, it's not like he knows that himself, but then again, who does? Animal Farm is a video essayist's wet dream, a source of reference for many a sociology project, a subject of examination for many a pretentious video essay, all pointing out the many hypocrisies of politics and ultimately criticizing the very concept of self-government. But the original Animal Farm novella, written by George Orwell, the 1984 guy, was released in 1945, at the ass end of World War II. So why the fuck are we still talking about it? Well, the answer to that is simple. It never stopped being relevant. Dystopian fiction has a way of being subtle about its criticisms in the most obvious ways. As long as you're not drawing direct reference to any real, living political figures, it ultimately means nothing if you shit-talk the systems they engage in within your stories. Social commentary is only as valuable as the conversations it provokes, and as much as people talk about Animal Farm, their direct political value is rather low, so it hardly ever amounts to much. Literally 1984, I swear. The thing that makes Animal Farm's political commentary so deep is in its unapologetic portrayal of the rise and decay of a fair political system, where at one point everyone is fighting together for some sense of perceived freedom, the pigs quickly separate themselves from the pack, and the main antagonist of the film, Napoleon, twists the system into something else. Something more self-serving. Before long, that ideal of freedom is lost, replaced with the demeaning feeling of being at the mercy of the very pigs that led the revolution in the first place. Boxer, one of the most valuable creatures, tossed to the side, murdered because he was a threat. The threat, of course, being the threat to influence the very society he fought to save, and because he wasn't a pig. This could be seen as a premonition of the way we treated our veterans after some of our greatest conflicts, and continue to treat them to this day, in spite of many programs that claim to do otherwise. The fact I have this much to say about anything regarding politics or our society as a whole is a large compliment to dystopian fiction. These stories are timeless because as our real-world society shifts and evolves, we get to look back, understanding the perspectives of the authors and directors who came before us, who put these stories out because they wanted better. In a way, you could say we understood, because these stories are still beloved to this very day. However, in spite of our understanding, we still struggle to find that sense of togetherness that dystopian fiction also aims to establish. If you're a writer and you're watching this video, perhaps you've taken some lessons from this. Maybe you can go off and craft your own dystopian society. But there's one more thing we need to talk about before I let you go. Something it would do us all to remember every once in a while. Logan's Run is a very weird movie. Honestly, I was approaching the conclusion of an old movie watching spree, and after watching Kroll, I was blown away by how well it mixed sci-fi with fantasy, so Logan's Run was naturally going to be my next choice. Logan's Run is not a film about accepting our inevitable death, though I won't be so brazen as to deny that it's one of many themes. Instead, I believe that Logan's Run is a film about societal pressure and normality. Logan isn't just running from his own death, but from society's expectations of him. As a Sandman, it's his duty to kill people who attempt to escape his perfect society. So for him to reject the very society he's likely killed hundreds defending, it has to be a sign of mental illness, right? The purpose of Francis in this narrative is to act as a foil to Logan, the perfect Sandman number 2 who still holds a shred of pride in the world he grew up in, turning a blind eye to the potential for improvement because it's either too hard for him to accept or he's grown too comfortable with the life he lives. Funnily enough, this leads to him being portrayed as the crazy one in the end, as he denies the world he can see right in front of him. Being normal, being complacent, is exactly what pushes bad people into positions of power uncontested. And though the internet may try to convince you otherwise, a lot of people holding prejudice is a matter of their environment. And artists, now more than ever, are making efforts to actively change those environments. And whether the vocal minority likes it or not, we admire them for it. They Live is a film that, while released in 1988, serves as the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Nada, Roddy Piper, is a badass, but it's not because he shit-talks old women or gets into fights with cops in alleyways. I feel like enough people do that in real life. It's because he's fighting to break the societal chains of the world he lives in, to help people take charge in their own lives and regain control of their own existence. The middle finger he throws up at the end of the movie isn't just to the aliens, but to the people who've watched his struggle, something that pushed him to his death and are still going to go to bed and wake up like nothing happened, drowning in their own incompetence, lamenting their own existence, and feeling helpless in the life they live. Dystopian fiction, in all of its sci-fi goofy glory, is one of the most interesting genres of fiction, because it serves as a wake-up call to those who embrace its messages and understand its commentary. It critiques the future because it wanted better. It judges us for our mistakes because it knows we're so much more than the sum of our worst parts. These stories captivated their audiences in the past with their messaging and storytelling, and now it captivates audiences in the future with just how ahead they really were. At a certain point, we just have to wake up. These stories exist for a reason. My name is John Sage, and it's good to be back.